let's talk about some tweaks that you can make to your layout to make drafting a little bit easier or more efficient for you as you're starting out. So we're going to go to the big A, top left corner. Mine's lagging a bit. It'll take a second here. And this middle button at the bottom, options. You can also type in OP and hit enter for options. I'm going to start on the display tab, colors. 2D model space, that's what we're in. You can see model space here, the bottom right. It's your main working space. We want to change the uniform background to black. It may look black, but it's a very, very dark charcoal gray. So we're going to make it true black. This will help with seeing certain colors that you may have in your drawing, or that drawings that you're getting from other people, different colors that they use. Sometimes they're hard to see on a gray background. You can also change, if you want, your crosshairs. I think it can be helpful to have one color of a crosshair in your model space versus when you're working in paper space. You can have a different color cursor, and then you know which space you're working in. Just kind of a nice little visual cue for you. So I'm going to go ahead and make mine green. And then if you want to change your paper space, it's called sheet layout. You can also change your uniform background there. I typically do black, and then for the uniform background, the paper background, I usually do a dark charcoal gray, like that. I'm going to hit apply after I also change the crosshairs to, let's say, red. If I apply and close, hit OK, you can kind of see what that does. I've got a green crosshair now. If I go into my paper space, it's red, so I know which spaces I'm working in. Double click into this viewport. I'm still in paper space, so even though I'm looking through my viewport into my model space, it's still going to keep me at a red cursor. That's okay. Going back to model, I've got green. Let's go back into options. Next thing you can do is change your crosshair size. This is just personal preference. Some people put these really big all the way across the screen. I like to have them a little bit bigger. It just helps if you happen to eyeball certain objects that you may be lining up. It can just be nice to have that quick visual reference. If it doesn't have to be perfect and you're just trying to line something up like that, it works really nice to have a bigger crosshair. You can go bigger and bigger, whatever you like. And then next, go to the selection tab. You can change your pick box size and your grip size. So your pick box size is basically at the center of your crosshair. It's pretty small by default. I usually bump it up a couple ticks. It'll just make it a little bit easier to grab pretty much anything in your drawing. The grip size, that's when you're selecting an object and you see the little endpoints and stuff that all have little blue grips. That's that size. I kind of like to make them about the same. So now you can see my crosshair box is a little bit bigger. And when you have a bunch of little objects that are next to each other, it can be easier to grab certain things with a bigger box. And then my grips are about the same size. So that's just personal preference. That's what I like. Go back into options, OP. We're going to look at the drafting tab. And you can also change your auto snap marker size. This one's not as big of a deal, but this has to do with your O snap. So if I want to move this object, and I'm kind of hovering around and it's showing me those O snaps locations. If they're a little bit bigger, sometimes they're easier to see. Maybe you want a different color as well. You can change the color of those. That maybe they're easier to see on your monitor or based on your backgrounds. Now, as far as your efficiency of working, since we work so much on the command line, it's helpful to dock the command line by grabbing these rows of dots here and just slamming it down to the bottom. And just stretching it up. I think it maybe by default is a little bit skinnier like that. But since you have to reference the command line so much, it's nice to have a few lines. That way, maybe some pertinent information doesn't scroll up out of your way, and then you have to go and look at it. Another big thing is your properties box. So if you type in PR, hit enter, that brings up your properties box, and it'll probably be floating. You can put it anywhere you want. I personally like to have it docked to the right side, and I actually stretch it out to be pretty wide, because you don't really need a whole lot of drawing space, viewing space for your drawing. You can always zoom in. And as a new drafter, I would definitely encourage just zoom in further. Get in the habit of zooming in and out. That way you can just more accurately select your objects, snap them, and see what you're doing. And then your layer list. So if you type in layer, hit enter, that'll bring up your layer list. It'll also be floating. All you got to do, just grab anywhere on the dark gray bar and slam it wherever you want it. I like to have it on the left side. And then it will do what the properties box did. It'll just kind of dock fully. This is not ideal. There's a little button right here, a little icon. It's kind of like a door made out of triangles. It's called AutoCAD. If you just click that, it basically tucks away, and then you can just hover when you want. If you have a bunch of layers in your drawing, I'm just gonna throw a bunch in randomly. Which, as you work more and more in AutoCAD, you'll see that you'll have tons of layers, and so it's nice to be able to quickly hover over this and change a layer. Instead of maybe coming up here and scrolling down. If you like this method, that's totally great. It's just another option because it stays open and you can see a bunch of layers, and you can also scroll sideways and see more different options that you'll learn about as you go through your drafting exercises or your job or whatever it is. And then you may not be aware of what external references are, but external references, or XREFs, are extremely important in working with AutoCAD. You almost always are going to use them in a professional setting. If you type in XR and hit enter, same thing. It's something good just to have docked, but have it hidden on the side, and it'll stack. So the layers will be on top, the XREFs will be on bottom. If you ever need to bring in a drawing, that menu is always there. And that's just a few tips. There's some other things that you can do, but let me know what you think. If you have any other questions.